Hi students, Assalamu alaikum. This is Wahid Yusuf, your English teacher. We are doing a poem currently that is The Tale of Custard the Dragon, and we completed the reading of this poem in the previous lecture. And in today's lecture, we'll discuss the poetic devices, the literary devices, the figures of speech used in the poem. So, this lesson is about figures of speech used in the poem, poetic devices, literary devices used in the poem. As I already told you that this poem contains a lot of literary devices, and we'll do this reading of the poem. We'll discuss all the literary devices we can find in this poem. See, as far as this poem is concerned, it is written in 15 stanzas. The poem contains 15 stanzas. The poem contains 15 stanzas, and every stanza contains 4 lines. Every stanza contains 4 lines. But there is an exception. Stanza 13 contains 6 lines. Stanza 13 contains 6 lines. So 15 stanzas are there, and among these 15 stanzas, 14 stanzas contain 4 lines each. 14 stanzas contain 4 lines each. And then there is this 13th stanza which contains 6 lines, and as far as the rhyme scheme of this poem is concerned, the rhyme scheme of this poem is AABB. AABB is the rhyme scheme of this poem. We can find like this: house, mouse, wagon, dragon. Again, ink, blink, mustard, custard. So this is A B B. A B. You can find out in every stanza. This is B B. And as far as a 13th stanza is concerned, 13th stanza, if we'll go to 13th stanza, that is here we have this 13th stanza. But presently up spoke little dog Mustard. I'd have been twice as brave if I hadn't been flustered. And up spoke Ink and up spoke Blink. We'd have been 3 times as brave, we think. And Custard said, I quite agree that everybody is braver than me. See, this is the only stanza which contains 6 lines, and if we try to give it a rhyme scheme, it is A B B and C C. So the rhyme scheme of this stanza would be like A B B and C C, and all the other stanzas have rhyme scheme of A and B B. So this was one of the techniques which has been used in the poem, and this was rhyme scheme of this poem. So we can simply say the poem has rhyme scheme of A B B. The poet has used the rhyme scheme of A and B B. Now coming to the poem itself, see, this is the first stanza. This is the first stanza of the poem, and in the very first stanza, we see a lot of poetic devices, literary devices used in it. See, first is rhyme scheme, that is AABB, and then we see repetition. The technique of repetition is used, where a word or a phrase is repeated. When a word, a phrase is repeated in a poem, in a stanza, that is what repetition is called. And we see here little and little, little and little. So this is repetition. We find this technique of repetition used. So use of the word little is the repetition in this stanza, or we can say in this poem. Then we again see another literary device used in this poem, that is oxymoron. Oxymoron is where two opposite words are used at the same place, and here we have this oxymoron dragon, and with this dragon there has been used this word pet. So dragon can never be this domesticated, and it is a wild animal, and dragon, with dragon this pet word has been used. So this is the technique of oxymoron, use of two words with opposite meanings is what oxymoron is. And here dragon the dragon represents wild thing, and it can't be made pet. So this pet dragon is what oxymoron is in this poem. And then we have another technique used here, that is this relio trulio little pet dragon. Relio trulio little pet dragon, this is another technique where the poet crafts changes words, and so that there is some rhyme in the poem, so that there is some effect, musical effect in the poem. And he has implemented these words here. He has put these words there, words like relio and trulio. And in these words we find this assonance here, last eo. So that is relio trulio. So eo is the similar vowel sounds used here. So that is what we call assonance. We call it assonance, the technique of assonance. Yes. And then we have in another stanza second, so another four lines. We shall see what is there in these four lines. So in these four lines similarly we have a rhyme scheme again, and then we have this simile. See, now the name of this black kitten was Ink, and the little gray mouse she called him Blick, and the little yellow dog was sharp as mustard. So this little yellow dog has been compared to mustard. Dog has been compared to mustard, and the little yellow dog was sharp as mustard. So this comparison has been made by using the word as, and this is simile, and again, but the dragon was a coward, and she called him Custard. She called him Custard. See, we have this covered, called, custard, k sound, and k sound. So this is alliteration. The technique of alliteration is used here. The technique of alliteration is used here. And we have the technique, another technique used here, that is anaphora. Where in the first stanza one line starts with and another line starts with and here one line starts with and another line starts with and. This is the technique of anaphora. Anaphora is where some poetic lines start with a single word. For example, if a line starts with some word and another line, that is the consecutive line, if that again starts with a similar word, that is the technique of anaphora. And of course we have this technique of repetition again, little. There is again this word here, this little. So this little, and this is again this repetition, use of repetition has been used here. And then we'll come to third stanza. This is the third stanza. Yes. See, Custard the dragon had big sharp teeth and spikes on the top of him and scales underneath. Mouth like fireplace, mouth like fireplace, chimney for a nose, and relio trulio daggers on his toes. See, this is stanza 3, and now in stanza 3 In the very first line, Custard the dragon had big sharp teeth. We have this technique of imagery. Technique of imagery is used here, and when we find his big sharp teeth and the spikes scales underneath, it is also we find in it the initial sound, that is sir in spikes, and initial sound of scales is again sir. So the sound sir, it is alliteration here, it is alliteration here. And then we have this simile, because this dragon's mouth has been compared to a fireplace. Dragon's mouth is compared with fireplace when the poet says mouth like a fireplace. And then we have metaphor here. His nose has been compared with a chimney. His nose has been compared with a chimney. And his these nails, the nails on his toes, they have been compared as daggers. They have been compared as daggers. And this is the comparison which has been made using metaphor here. Chimney for a nose, and daggers on his toes. So these two comparisons are made by using the technique of metaphor. So we have, this is metaphor, this is metaphor, and this is simile. And again, refrain has been used here. Refrain has been used here. Refrain means repetition of a sentence again and again, repetition of a stanza again and again in the poem. And here this repetition, and rulio trulio, and a rulio. This is what the refrain is used here. The repetition of again and again, when something is some sentences repeated, something is repeated again and again in a poem. That is what a refrain is. So the refrain of this that is, and the rulio. So that is what refrain we called, and this has been used every now and then in the poem. So we call it the technique of refrain. Then we have another stanza, that is the fourth stanza. And in fourth stanza we find that we have rhyme scheme. We have rhyme scheme first, a b b, and that is with every stanza of the poem. And then we find alliteration. In the very first line of the fourth stanza we find alliteration, this b, b, this b, 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 and b. This b sound. We find this b sound in Belinda. We found the b sound in the initial in the start of brave, barrels, and bears. This Belinda starts with b sound, brave starts with b sound, and barrel starts with b sound, bears starts with b sound. So this b sound is repeated in the nearby words of this line. That is alliteration, what we call alliteration. And there is another technique which has been used in this line particularly, that is hyperbole. This is hyperbole, exaggerating something. And this braveness of Belinda, it has been exaggerated, and we have been told she was as brave as a barrel full of bears, as a group of bears. So this is exaggeration, this is simply exaggeration, and this is what we call hyperbole. And again in this stanza we have, see, in this very line again, she's simply, we find so two or three devices used in this line particularly. One, alliteration; second, hyperbole; and third, simile. Because Belinda is compared to a bear. She is compared. Belinda's bravery is compared to that of a barrel full of bears, as a barrel full of bears. And it is simile here. And here again simile has been used when a mustard was as brave as a tiger in rage. So mustard's bravery is compared to that of an angry tiger, to that of an angry tiger. See, we find a technique of consonants used here. N sound in ink and n sound in blink. And we also find technique of assonance. device of assonance, that is I sound in ink, I sound in blink. So that is what technique of assonance is used here. So all these things we find in this stanza. Then we have another stanza, this one. See, in this stanza, it is stanza 6. Stanza 6. See, rhyme scheme is AABB, simply AABB. And we find a refrain in this stanza again, that is, and Rulio, Trulio. Here, we find refrain in this stanza. We find repetition of this stanza, that is tickled, tickled, tickled. And this is the technique of repetition. When some words are repeatedly used in nearby lines, that is repetition. And a refrain is something else. When something is repeated, when a line, a phrase, when a stanza is repeatedly repeated in the poem, repeatedly repeated in the poem. And here, this is a Rulio Trulio, as the Rulio Trulio cowardly dragon. It is refrain. And this tickled, it is used here, again used here. It is repetition, it is repetition. And we find another technique here, that is allusion. Allusion is reference to any person or place. And here we have this reference of Percival, reference of Percival. He is called as Percival. The dragon is compared to a Percival. Percival is in Roman tradition a character who is supremely innocent, brave, and succeeds in getting the Holy Grail. And Percival is compared to that. Sorry, this dragon is compared to that Percival. So this is the technique of allusion has been used here. And another technique which has been used here is the technique of personification. Personification, because I think this personification is from the very beginning of the poem. This personification has been used in the poem. When this ink, blink, mustard, they are filled with human characteristics. Even though they are animals, mouse and cat and this dog, but they have these human names. That is a kind of personification. They are acting as humans. They talk like humans. They behave like humans. And for example, they rudely behave with the dragon. That is what personification is. When human characteristics, human attributes are given to inanimate things. So these animals, and that is dog, that is the mouse, the cat, which we find in the poem. So these animals, they act as if they are humans. They have some human attributes in this poem. That is how personification has been used in the poem also. Now we have this stanza 6, and stanza 6 has some poetic devices used in it also. See, Belinda giggled till she shook the house. So in this stanza, the very first line of this stanza is with a poetic device, that is hyperbole. So because of Belinda's giggling, it is not possible that she can shook the house because of her giggling. So this is what exaggeration is. This is what hyperbole is called. And then we have this ink and blink and blink said weak, which is giggling for a mouse. Ink and mustard rudely asked for his age, when Custard cried for a nice cage. So we have this onomatopoeic sounds used here, that is giggled and weak. As far as onomatopoeic sounds are used, onomatopoeia is a figure of speech which refers to the formation of words from sounds. So the word is actually how the sound is produced. For example, like any animal, if any animal produces a sound, that word is named after that sound. That is what onomatopoeic word is. For example, snake produces the sound hiss, and that sound has been named as hiss. So there is a word for that sound, that is hiss itself. Or we can call a bees buzz. So for that sound which is produced by bees, we call that buzz. So the sound production and the pronunciation of the word and the word itself are same. So the sound is produced and the words, they are same. For example, hiss, hiss the sound, and hiss the word. So the word hiss is onomatopoeia. The word hiss is onomatopoeia. And here these words, that is giggled and weak, they are onomatopoeic words. And then we have this a repetition of the word custard has been used here. Again, the word custard has been used here again. So this is another technique, that is repetition. And then we have another stanza, that is seventh stanza. This suddenly they heard a nasty sound, and Mustard growled, and they all looked around. Meow, cried Ink, and ooh, cried Belinda. For there was a pirate climbing in the window, climbing in the window. See, here we have in the very first line, we have the technique of repetition. Repeat. Two words have been repeated. One word have been repeated twice. That is suddenly. And then we have onomatopoeic sounds again. This meow, this ooh, they are onomatopoeic sounds. And this is the craftiness of Orjan Nash, that he has used this winda. He has used this winda to create rhyme instead of window. It is actually poetic license, he can do this, but he has misspelled this word, that is window, and he has written as at winda, winda, so that the rhyme can be created, Belinda winda. So this is the beauty of Orjan Nash, what he does with words. And we find alliteration in this line. This suddenly, this is alliteration and sound. So three times this sound is used, so that is alliteration in this poem. So I hope you would have understood these literary devices. This There are a lot of literary devices. Every line contains some literary device. So this is very important. That is why it will take another lecture to complete, because we observed that in every line there is some technique used in this poem. Even some lines contain two, three, four techniques, and that is why it took a lot of time. And I think I shall make another video on this poetic techniques, and in the another video I think we shall complete this topic, that is poetic devices of this poem. So have a nice day. Allah Hafiz.